Welcome my friend to my library of games, a collection I've amassed over the years. There's PC games, console games, and games that are old and those that are new. There's the obscure and the popular, so why not come in and join me as I curate these games and have a look at to see which games were good, which games were bad, which were the hidden gems, and which ones deserve to be hidden. Sit down and relax, and welcome to Alex's Gaming Library. In today's review, we'll be looking at the game Spore, Will Wright's last game with Maxis, and a game about creating life itself. Hello my friends and welcome to the Spore review. My name is Alex. I am curator of the game library that I have, or owner of the game library I have, or a man who has spent way too much of his money on video games. But like I stated, it is my mission in life now to immortalise the collection and sort of have a say on every game that passes through my line of sight, I guess. And that is what we're doing today. We are reviewing Spore. However, just before we got into this review of Spore, before we get into this whole new set of reviews, as this is a whole new series of my gaming library, what I decided to do is I just wanted to quickly go through the new review system, for it has changed a little bit now that I can fully focus on reviewing. So, as it stands, we are now going to still be marking out of 100, but we'll be doing a whole new leaderboard, just because now that the criteria has changed, it would corrupt the results. But at some point, we are going to compare the games from Series 1 to the games of Series 2. That being said, we have a whole new segment. We've merged some segments and just changed the general scoring around a bit. So our new segment is going to be What's on the Box, and I sound way too excited about that, but it's just something I had thought about in my head. Lots of games come in boxes, like, you know, just this generic example game, which is a very good game actually, though I might change my mind when I review it. But what we're going to do with What's on the Box is we're going to be judging what's not just on the front. I mean, you know, this is nice on the front, but we're going to be looking at what's on the back. Now, this is where we have all the marketing blurbs, all the you can do this in a game, and we can do this in a game, and all those lovely claims. We're going to see if they're actually true or if it's just some creative marketing, which is something I'm used to as in my former life as a journalist. You have to get a little bit creative with your wording. So I just thought we're going to have a look at that. We're going to see how accurate the sales pitch is, which we are doing with Spore in this review. And I've just moved a few things around now. The gameplay section is now worth 30 points. There's now no longer a graphics section or a sound section. I've merged those two into a section that is now called Presentation, where I'll discuss both of them at once. And Story and Replay Value are still there, though there are some amendments to the Replay Value section, but I'll explain that when we get to that section. But that is what is going on. We are having a whole new segment, we're changing it up, having some fun, and I really do hope you like this new formula. If you don't, if you think there's something that needs to be changed, if there's something you like or something you don't like, please give me a shout. Tell me what you think about this new review style, or if you just think this new review style's trash. But either way, we're going to get on and we're going to review Spore, a lovely game by Maxis. Or is it that lovely? I just call a lot of things lovely because I'm not very good at insulting people. Still, maybe I can do it when I'm not looking at you. Maybe when I'm hiding behind some gameplay footage I can be rather snide. On with the review then. Let's have a look at the context of Spore before we get into review, and then we'll see what's on the box, or the Steam store page, because I'm reviewing the Steam version. So, to set the stage, Spore is a game based around tinkering with the building blocks of life. It was the last major project to be spearheaded by revered game designer Will Wright during his time with Maxis,
before his departure. The game was massively hyped up before its release in 2008, with advertisements talking about the endless possibilities of making your own creatures and guiding them from cell to galactic superpower, and PC Gamer magazine dropped a very favourable pre-release interview which I remember reading over and over again while wishing my PC would magically become powerful enough to run the game. Needless to say, I asked for that game at Christmas and I didn't get it. Mainly because the specs said an internet connection was needed and I didn't have one at the time. 11 years later though, I have an internet connection and got to experience this game at long last, and have now sunk just over 50 hours into the game across 2 playthroughs from cell to space stages. And did this game live up to my expectations? Well, kind of. A lot of what got me excited in the first place was there, but the actual gameplay outside of the creative tools leave a lot to be desired, but we'll get into that as we go along. So now let's move along and review Spore, and have a look at what's on the box. From single cell to galactic god, evolve your creature in a universe of your own creations. Play through Spore's 5 evolutionary stages. Cell, creature, tribe, civilization, and space. Each stage has its own unique style, challenges, and goals. You can play how you choose, start in cell and nurture one species from humble tide pool organism to intergalactic traveller, or jump straight in and build tribes or civilizations on new planets. What you do with your universe is up to you. Spore gives you a variety of powerful yet easy to use creation tools, so you can create every aspect of your universe: creatures, vehicles, buildings, and even starships. While Spore is a single player game, your creations are automatically shared with other players, providing a limitless number of worlds to explore and play. The blurb written on the Steam store page for the game, which is the game version I'm reviewing, though I also have the creepy and cute parts pack installed, but I'll touch on that at the end of the review. Now, in regards to the blurb, this is more or less fully accurate, though one citation may be needed if you're excessively picky like me, which is you can't automatically jump into tribal or civilization stages until you complete the previous stages at least once. So if you didn't want to deal with cells or animals at all, sorry, but you're gonna have to bite that bullet. Now, next up are a few of the bullet points to help market the game a little bit more, and they are as follows. Create your universe from microscopic to macrocosmic, from tide pool amoebas to thriving civilizations to intergalactic starships. Everything is in your hands. Again, this is accurate marketing, though don't expect to be galaxy hopping in your spaceship, as the game is actually set in one single galaxy, but said galaxy is done in a very impressive scale. Evolve your creature through 5 stages. It's survival of the funnest, as your choices reverberate through generations and ultimately decide the fate of your civilization. The evolution mechanics are somewhat debatable, but it will be you evolving your creature, and in a way it is survival of the funnest, as you really do have a considerable amount of creative freedom in designing your creature, from the sensible to the excessively weird, and this is a game where choices you make will actually have lasting effects throughout the game. Explore other players' galaxies. Will your creature rule the universe, or will your beloved planet be blasted to smithereens by a superior alien race? This point is a little confusing, as I couldn't find an option to visit other people's galaxies. However, the galaxy my race inhabited was populated by races created by other players, but there is a possibility that your planet can actually be blown into smithereens. Share with the world. Everything you make is shared with other players and vice versa, providing tons of cool creatures to meet and cool places to visit. Again, this is a true point, and everything you make is automatically shared to the greater Spore community and can appear in other people's games or in new games started by yourself, and this feature is one of the main features which we'll get into a little bit later. Overall, the advertising for this game, or at least the advertising on the Steam page, is very accurate, with only one or two minor citations needed, which puts this game on a positive track, since honesty and integrity is the best policy, and I'm sure many people don't like being lied to by advertisers. I've had some burns before where games have misrepresented themselves and have been utter disappointments. For this segment, I'm going to go through each of the 5 stages of the game individually in order to properly articulate what is good and bad with the gameplay of Spore. Starting off in the cell stage, you'll be taking the role of a microscopic organism that has been born from the primordial ooze of a recently crashed meteor. You'll be swimming around in the waters and finding food to grow your little microbe, and you will begin plotting the course towards what attitude your species will take towards solving problems, which can take a hostile approach, a pragmatic approach, or a peaceful approach. The hostile approach in this stage would be to equip a pair of gnashers and start eating any creature that is unfortunate enough to be smaller than you, while peaceful creatures will happily munch on the plant matter floating around a pool and staying out of the way of carnivores, whereas those who are pragmatic will have a little bit of both, a nice varied diet. Overall, this is a very simple section of the game. It reminds me of playing an arcade game like Snake or Asteroids. Okay, maybe not the most relevant game titles, but what I mean is this stage is very simple and repetitive as you keep finding food or creatures to eat while avoiding the ones who would like to eat you. You also gain access to the cell creator once you begin mating with other members of your species who happen to exist and seem content to leave all that hard work of evolving and growing to you. The cell creator is an easy to use tool which allows you to create a varied manner of microscopic organisms with the parts you find on your travels, because no one evolves based on their environment, just based on stapling whatever they dug up out of a bin around the back of a local takeaway to their bodies. And yes, I am throwing shade at the evolution and growth mechanics, but I'll explain in more detail in the creature part of the gameplay segment, and I'll go deeper into the creative tools at the end of the gameplay section. Either way, all you need to know right now is if you have gathered up enough DNA through completing tasks which fill up that little progression bar at the bottom, you can design the next generation of your species. Once you've hatched out your egg and everyone's magically evolved to be the same as you keep on with the cycle of killing or avoiding, eating, mating, upgrading, and repeat, though as you do this you'll keep growing and gain the satisfactory feeling of being able to chow down on that big snapping microbe who was bullying you a few minutes ago, until you realise the big collection of spikes, eyes and teeth has now identified you as a perfect entree for their 5-course dinner. I do like the mechanic of a constantly present danger as you grow, as it keeps a consistent pressure to perform on and prevents complacency. Plus, I did get a minor adrenaline kick when trying to outsmart predatory creatures with some fancy swimming tricks. Tricks which are tricky to pull off though, since the controls felt quite floaty and delayed, but given the context that you're swimming around in the thick primordial soup, this is forgivable. But when attaching on parts designed to increase your agility, this does get annoying when I felt little to no effect on my ability to escape predators and not get munched. However, after much eating and much being eaten, you'll escape the arcade game sector after about 20 to 30 minutes and be ready to step out onto the land. Overall, the cell stage was pretty fun and served its purpose. The length was just right and ended just before it started to feel a bit too grindy. Plus, the creativity element of designing your cell was fun. My only main criticism of this stage was the controls feeling a little iffy, but it's no game breaker, just a minor irk at worst. After plenty of eating, your little microbe becomes more complex and a lot bigger thanks to the addition of a brain. However, brains aren't very waterproof, so it's time to go on a land. Sorry to those of you who fantasized recreating a Mon Calamari race. You are trapped on the land from now on. Also, if you wanted to go in the skies, I'm afraid that's out of bounds as well. You can get the wings to kind of fly, but no actual flying, unfortunately. It's the ground time now. Gameplay in this stage is now more of an open world affair, as you will be guiding a member of your species to achieve sentience. And how is this done? Well, through social interaction or beating the crap out of inferior species. Once again, this stage breaks down into the 3-path theme with a hostile, pragmatic or peaceful approach to evolution. The choices you made in the cell stage will also stick with you from here on out, as depending on which of the 3 categories you ended up in, you'll unlock a special ability. Herbivores can sing a special song to entrance other creatures in awe, omnivores can summon a flock of other creatures to help them, and carnivores have a deafening roar to put fear in the hearts of their rivals. Your behaviour in the cell stage will also have unlocked subsequent abilities in future stages and plays a part in deciding your ultimate alignment in the final stage, which in the context of a greater plan sounds weird, that what you did as a cell will play a part in deciding your alignment and culture as a space-faring empire, but I really like it when a game sticks to the mantra of choices, having consequences, and following through with it and affecting gameplay in ways more than which NPCs will want to bang your character after lights out. Back to the main point though, you'll now be engaging in gameplay that is somewhat similar to the cell stage, in that you'll complete a task that pushes you further along the progression chart, run away from the creatures that are bigger and stronger than you, mate, evolve, and repeat and eat every now and then. That is really all there is to the creature stage. When encountering another species of animal, you will either converse with them and play a pose matching minigame, or just go ham and beat them up and eat the corpses with some fava beans and a nice Chianti. This was a segment I was personally most excited to play, as the creature creator tools really let you go to town designing the shape of your creature, from little blobby creatures to ones with huge legs, or big beefy multi-armed hecagigantes. But as the segment progresses on, creative freedom becomes displaced by a need to evolve with better parts for socializing and killing, which can be an annoyance, especially since what parts you may add are dictated by what you scavenge from fossils and skeletons scattered around the local area, meaning that while you pictured a super cool mouth brimming with fanged teeth, you'll end up with a mouth of a beaver instead, because it provides better singing abilities. What's also disappointing in this section is how sentience and evolution is governed entirely by a mix of the whims of yourself and rival creatures, rather than, say, actual factors which would affect survival, such as environmental factors like temperature, food scarcity, wetness, or the composition of atmosphere, or even the positioning of food, since, you know, the food was on the top of the trees, hence the giraffes grew really big necks. You will grind to the same endpoint every time, and while the journey may be different, there is actually very little variation, as you'll either befriend all of the neighbours, kill all your neighbours, or kill some and befriend other neighbours. You do get to build a pack as you go, but that only really serves as boosting your chances of winning the social minigame or reinforcements when your raid on a rival nest goes wrong. Nothing really comes out of the blue to shake up the journey, no ice ages or climate change, massive cosmic disasters, diseases, or other creatures achieving sentience before you, meaning this is what should be an open-ended experience becoming quite stale. There is one event in the form of a migration of your species, but it's not up to you where your nest goes, as other members of your species just choose it and then leave you behind, leaving you to catch up. And it's never really documented why your species decides to migrate, you know, down to a lack of food or the destruction of the environment or climate change. It just happens at a predetermined point of your evolution. Overall, the creature stage is the first of a few disappointments you'll be encountering from a gameplay perspective, as it's just a bit of a grind. The social minigame gets boring quick and can arbitrarily fail even when you have the best parts and the biggest pack to help you. The combat feels clunky and non-responsive, meaning you will quickly get overpowered and killed by even little creatures. It's still a really nice idea, but it fails in execution due to the focus being focused entirely on interaction rather than including all the other aspects and factors of raising a creature through the evolutionary process. Instead, we've just gone for some form of intelligent design. After chowing down on enough inferior species or becoming a friend of the world, your creatures will discover that one thing that sparked humanity's evolution from monkeys to cave dwellers: fire. You have now entered the tribal stage, and you will now be promoted to the role of an RTS player, as that's the genre shift that occurs here. Age of Empires this ain't though, as there's only one resource, which is food, which will either be meat or fruit depending on your creature's dietary requirements, and once again you'll be progressing to the next stage based on how you interact with your neighbours, as other creatures are becoming sentient and only one may progress any further. Like I said, this is real-time strategy at its most simple. Gather food, recruit extra tribe members, and then Zerg rush your rivals, though you'll either be Zerg rushing with spears or with gifts. Food makes up the universal currency for recruiting, gifting and building, and while I do get this as ancient hierarchies were based off he who controls the food gets to be king, it makes less sense that stacking some meat together or fruit together will make a tent designed to create torches and axes instead of, say, wood, or finding primitive metals and animal hides for building the tents, as you will be responsible for keeping your tribe well fed too. Again, this is a little irk that kind of breaks the immersion a little bit, but it does uncover a repeating pattern in this game, which we will continue to see, of missed opportunities and the overly simplified gameplay. Anyway, getting back to progression, you'll once again find yourself playing a social minigame if you're trying to be friendly, where you need to basically press the correct button in time with what the other tribe requests, which does mean stockpiling and equipping instruments, though which instruments will be requested by other tribes is kind of random. If you're taking the hostile approach, just grab your warriors and rip down the chieftain's hut of your enemies to wipe them out. There is some minor nuances to the combat this time, as there are different weapons you can equip to make your tribe members better at fighting different things, but that's really about as deep as it goes, and it's not even that deep at that. This is also the second most difficult stage of the 5 stages, and especially on harder difficulties, as emergent tribes tend to instantly hate you and will attack in groups, which can be annoying as a joint attack cannot really be repelled since there's no base defense mechanic or an option to migrate your tribe to greener pastures or even go full nomadic and wander the steppes while burning down the occasional Roman Empire, which again is actually kind of a missed opportunity now that I think about it. The diversity of tribal life, that is not setting fire to Rome. Actually, Rome doesn't get a look in this section, as once you've allied or destroyed enough tribes, knock knock, here comes the civilization stage, which instantly evolves you up to a tech level equivalent to the early 20th century. And that's really about it. There isn't any ways of setting the laws of your tribe as well, by the way. Don't think you're going that deep. It is literally just a real-time strategy, which again really does come across as a missed opportunity, because there are all sorts of tribal societies. There are those that went the way of a commerce, went the way of a warrior, those who valued warriorship. I mean, look at, like, in ancient civilizations, and I know that's going a little bit further, but, like, look at Athens and Sparta. The Spartans were big warrior guys, and the Athenians were dedicated to philosophy, learning, and democracy, but yeah, that doesn't really get reflected in Spore or any of these, like, attitudes that we discovered in ancient times. Still, every species isn't going to follow our way of technical progression, where we go from caves to tribes to ancient empires, fallen empires, middle ages, discovery, revolution, enlightenment, industrial revolutions, modernity, and your race in Spore won't either. You'll go straight from a tribe to basically starting a match of Sid Meier's civilization in the modern era. The gameplay style doesn't really shift away from being a bare-bones RTS in this stage, but a bit of puzzle gameplay is parachuted in when you are designing your city. But before you can do any of that, it is time to design your buildings, and yes, this time you have total creative freedom over how your buildings look. You'll need to design 4 buildings in this stage: town hall to be the centre of your city, houses for extra population. Again, this is real-time strategy at its most simple, and you'll be designing the vehicles of your civilization who will carry out your will. Now, depending on how you've behaved in previous stages, you will start out either making religious vehicles, military vehicles, or trade vehicles. Which means, yes, there are now 3 approaches, or more to the point, the pragmatic approach has now manifested fully and is no longer a balancing act between outright conquest or outright peace. To progress in this stage, you'll basically be doing the exact same thing you've been doing for the past 2 stages, which is rocking up your neighbours, doing something to prove you're better than them, rinse and repeat. There's no more food to worry about now, though you'll be fighting to control spice geysers to make money from which you'll use to purchase everything, because we are still sticking with one resource and one resource only. No resource wars here. There are 10 cities to take control of, and 4 other civilizations will be vying for control of the planet, though what they stand for or what their cultural beliefs are or anything doesn't really matter, or more to the point, doesn't exist. There is no national identity or culture or established law or history of your race. I mean, I know you've built your race from cradle to grave, but it does feel like we have skipped out a great big chunk of history. So instead, it's just several members of your species have splintered out for no known reason, and all now want to have a go at each other, which also means that the other tribes who were of different species to you either got genocided or magically died out at some point, even if you made friends with them. So, yeah, that was worth our time, wasn't it? There are 3 ways to achieve taking over cities, and none of them involve using the shallow and useless diplomacy options unless you need to bribe another faction into not invading you for 2 minutes. But don't trust anyone, as you will get betrayed and curb stomped at least once, because the AI usually just has it in for you. You can either spam military vehicles at enemy cities until you blow them all up and then move in, spam trade vehicles at other nation cities until they offer to sell themselves to you, or you can spam religious vehicles at rival cities and take over the city by turning them into your religion. And which religion is that, do I hear you ask? Why, the religion of extreme ambiguity and gigantic holograms, because there is no established belief system or customizable pantheon of tenets, such as ones featured in Sid Meier's Civilization 5 and 6, which again is a colossal missed opportunity, as after much frustration with the real-time strategy mechanics, I found that going for a rushed religious victory was the best way of cheesing my way through this stage, mainly because your units just do not obey commands when trying to attack cities and will instead target random buildings that they want to target instead of following through on a well-structured plan to absolutely cripple city defences and then finish off the town centre. You will also have no control over any other aspects of your nation, as I've mentioned before, no policy making or deciding which new lands to settle. You are basically a general leading the troops on the behalf of some nameless leader, and the fact that you need to get all the cities makes this segment a bit of a grind, as this is a dance that we have boogied before, as in we boogied it in the tribal stage. I also do have a bit of an irk with the designing of vehicles too, since there is no deep strategy to units or a noticeable rock paper scissors system in play to create a somewhat engaging combat environment. Instead, you will start off by building the base components for your vehicle, but as you add parts you will find yourself playing a delicate balancing act between health, attack strength and speed. Now in some senses I can totally see how adding several guns or tons of armor can make a vehicle slower, but other times it can get a bit ridiculous where adding a gun means taking a huge hit to the health, or adding armor and an extra engine somehow makes the vast arsenal of missile launchers you've added hit with as much impact as a faulty pea shooter. If the system was set up so maybe certain weapons would make a vehicle more prone to taking critical damage, that would have been more sensible, or a tiering system of lower vehicles and elite vehicles, or even scaling costs to match how OP a vehicle is, would have been better than the system that we receive in this game. It's an interesting puzzle, I'll give it that, but it's also one that causes much frustration. It really does sound like I do have a massive downer on this segment at the end of the day, and I really do. This is easily my least favourite section of the lot, and also the most difficult, because also the enemies will usually advance really quick, and before you know it they'll be spamming millions and billions of vehicles and planes to take your cities down into the ground and make you restart the entire segment again, and that was really bloody annoying. And the difficulty as well doesn't really feel like it's a way of punishing me for being unskilled. It's just being difficult through being obtuse yet wafer thin in strategic opportunities, since it is just really based on Zerg rushing. But I also guess that once you do have everyone submit to your rule, or if you bung the game a load of Spore books to insta-win, you can progress onto the 5th and final stage. The final frontier, the place where all your previous choices add up, the part where the gameplay is finally different but also really grindy. You will start this stage by designing your ship, and this is an opportunity for you to have full creative control, as what you place on your ship has no effect on the gameplay, as you'll be buying the upgrades and tools piece by piece across the course of your mission, as the gameplay shifts from being an RTS to more of an RPG, with some minor RTS elements. In this stage, you take on the role as the captain of the first spacecraft built by your species, and after some brief tutorials, the galaxy is your oyster. This stage is where the gameplay finally opens up more and offers more things to do, but don't be thinking this is where the gameplay gets deeper. You've just got more activities to grind rather than, say, running a galactic empire. You'll mostly be pottering about from system to system and taking quests from neighbouring empires to raise enough funds to buy colony kits so you can grow your own empire and harvest enough spice to sell to the highest bidder. You'll once more be engaging in diplomacy with other races who vary in attitude, with some being warmongers and others just want peace. But once you have a good income, you can basically buy friendships and alliances, or just do a couple of missions, which are pretty much always fetch quests, but they are good for building up some early income of Spore books. Once again, don't be expecting any complexity or depth to the diplomacy, even if there is a nifty attitude measurement calculation showing which factors are affecting your standing, since a big dirty bribe fudges it quite easily. In order to progress to completion of this stage, you'll need to prove your empire is the greatest and advance through the chain of command and then the hierarchy of empires, ultimately attaining the rank of omnipotence. And how do you do that? You grind, of course! Now, I do like how it is pretty open-ended as to how you accumulate enough badge points to attain the top ranking, as you are finally let off the leash in a sense, and by a sense I mean that your empire will keep you in a stranglehold of servitude, since you may notice that pirates and other empires employ entire fleets of spaceships to protect their homeworlds and invade yours. But it turns out your race doesn't really have much of a work ethic or a competent military command structure, as you will be the one and only spaceship pilot, meaning that anytime you start a long voyage or grinding up a specific goal, you can bet your life that one of the colonies will be calling you to whinge that pirates are bullying them, and you are the only one who can save them, since investing in a defense squad of spaceships is too much effort or too sensible. And instead they will need to recall your fleet, which is currently on the other side of the galaxy. Other races will eventually also start doing this to you too, and demand that you deal with their problems for them, such as eco-disasters, because, well, I actually don't have a good explanation as to why, but you are basically being held a diplomatic hostage at that point, because you don't even get a reward for doing these. And I am sorry to be ragging on this gameplay so much, but there were several occasions when I had gone out of my way and interrupted all of my plans to deal with a pirate invasion, and as soon as I arrived, they were just clearing off anyway, and I get all the credit for defeating them, as well as the feeling of my time being wasted and a slight increase in blood pressure and pondering questions in my mind, such as, how well are these idiots going to actually fend for themselves if I decided to become a hermit on the other side of the galaxy? As a superior planet colonising race, you will also be looking after the terraforming of planets to ensure new colonies can thrive and reach their maximum potential. Unfortunately, this is a game mechanic that does contribute to the grand schema, in that terraform planets are more profitable, so you don't just go around dumping colonies on random moons, which will sit around and do nothing except grind up that badge for how many colonies you have. Terraforming, I would say, was a mechanic that I found kind of uninteresting, but at the same time somewhat engaging, as you have to balance temperature and atmospheric density to an increasingly precise balance, and also ensure that the food web is filled out with a variety of plants and animals, which was also somewhat fun. Well, fun when one isn't fighting a losing battle with the abduction beam controls, which short out if anything gets in the way of your mouse pointer, such as an errant ship or one of your travelling companions, which when you get to watch the animals that you've picked up get tossed across the air and then splat onto the ground, and the game will tell you for the umpteenth time that's a good way of getting animals killed. You can then also try and interact with the lesser advanced species who are in the tribal or civilization stages and try and bring them up to your technological level, but none of my attempts with crop circles ever did anything, and it was actually just easier just to dump a monolith on the planet, which opens up their pathetic little minds, and then wipe out the ungrateful little buggers when they do become sentient and reach the space stage, and then instead of thanking me, actually start demanding tributes out of my empire, which was capable of wiping them out in one effortless sweep. Grinding and crappy controls aside, however, this is actually the ultimate endgame, the Enlightenment. Trying to find out the purpose of why Spore creatures exist, or if there is a purpose outside the endless repetitive cycle of life. Well, there is. As you collect more treasures on your travels and level up, whispers will spread about the centre of the galaxy and a large hostile empire that guards it. At one point, you are ordered to investigate the core region of the galaxy and make contact with those who guard the core, which turns out to be a hostile boss race of rowdy cyborgs who hate organic life. One would then think that the next quest further along the career would to be access the centre of the galaxy and discover the secret that is being guarded so well. And those who are playing some 4D chess would assume a quest line would be given at the end of the space stage with missions tailored to what alignment your race has ended up after all your choices across the evolution of your creature. However, this never happens. You don't have to go to the centre of the galaxy, and there's no quest to facilitate a way in, since trying to get there is a painful experience of constantly getting killed or rolling the dice with black holes and hoping one just dumps you very close by. In the end, I didn't even make it to the centre of the galaxy, as the grind and the repetition of the space stage had just worn me out, and dealing with the groks was more of a chore than a challenge. So like a naughty person, I did look up on the wiki what the reward was, and I'm not going to spoil it for you. However, if you are planning to go one better than me and make it to the centre of the galaxy, please lower your expectations of what you expect to find there and what the big jazzy reward is supposed to be. Overall, while I appreciate the space stage for trying to do its own thing and be a real standout stage from all the others, and more or less be its own standalone game in a way, the many flaws, missed opportunities and grind wore me down and put me off from completing the game. Last but not least, I just want to touch upon the creative tools, which really are brilliant, and despite the gameplay limitations and factors for certain things that you will create, they are very user-friendly, easy to navigate, and really can allow for some great creations with a little bit of imagination and patience. I would say my only irks are with the building designer tools, as I sometimes felt a little bit at odds with the controls and wished for a bit more camera freedom so I could place the blocks down just right and not have them misaligned or floating about. And some of the forced symmetry on vehicles was a bit of irksome, but no deal breaker. Just to lastly comment on a technical level as well, I got this game running on my Windows 10 PC with no issue, though you will need to make an Origin account to access the online features, even if you do buy the game on Steam. Just be warned, however, that crashing does occur occasionally, so make sure you are saving frequently. Starting off in the cell stage, it is probably the nicest looking of all the stages. The cartoony art style of all the other cells and watery backgrounds and clever overlaying of bigger creatures in the background creates a good visual spectacle and also a good sense of scale. The sounds in this stage are also great, with everything sounding scaled and the music adapting to the situation, from peacefully eating up some plant matter up to being chased by a massive cell-eating monster. The music for the initial cutscene as well, when starting your species, is also just brilliant, and it's one of the few glimpses as we get into the true potential of the game. Moving on to the creature stage, and the cartoony art style continues to endear itself as you move on to designing your creature, and the graphics are quite flexible and accommodating creatures of varying shapes and sizes, from the sensible to the ridiculous. The sound remains somewhat strong though, the music takes a back seat to the sound design in this part, as the sound effects are done really well, from wandering the wilderness to the distant roar of a very large beast, alongside a wide variety of calls, shrieks and roars made by your creatures depending on what mouthpiece you give them. In the tribal things, where things start to get a little bit RTS, this is the stage where I start to feel like the presentation begins to fall a little bit short. The music is still good, and I really like the Mesoamerican style tunes when engaging in the social minigames, and the tribal style language used by your creatures was a nice touch. In terms of looks, however, there is a bit of a shortfall in that there's a lack of outfits to put on your creatures, but at the same time I don't want to be the game designer who has to design shirts or suits of armour for creatures of all shapes and sizes. There isn't really anything to comment on in regards to the presentation of the city stage, since the majority of the content is player design, but I do like the diversity of building tools available for the buildings. I would have liked more building design tools, but what we get is actually very satisfactory, and also the ability to compose your own national anthem is pretty cool and actually quite easy to do so. And as we blast into a space stage, this is another strong area in regards to the presentation. In fact, you are not some 2-bit loser trying to take over a solar system, but you are some 2-bit empire trying to take over a galaxy. And this entire galaxy has been rendered and designed. The galaxy has 41,560 stars approximately that you can visit, and each one is there, invisible and scaled in a way that does represent the sheer enormity of the galaxy, but also a shrinking galaxy as your ship becomes capable of bigger star jumps. Each of the planets are procedurally generated, and overall they look quite good. You do get some repetition of some of the more extreme geography types, which is a bit odd, but nothing really that's much of a game breaker, as, like I said, sometimes you do have to sacrifice a few things when you get absolutely honkingly huge scale. The sounds of space are also suitably atmospheric too, even though there isn't supposed to be any sound in space, but the music is calm, and as you zoom out to view the galaxy in its entirety, it wells up suitably as you look upon what is your home and the home of so many others. In regards to the voices for the alien races, they all sound suitably alien, and the different alignments all have their own little speech patterns, and also the voices have different variants of pitches and so on and so forth, just to prevent too much repetitiveness. Overall, I like the various alien voices, though I would be lying if I said there wasn't one or two that didn't grate my nerves slightly, and it can be a bit awkward when you do encounter a race which has a voice that really doesn't fit their appearance, but it can also be kind of funny, and once again, that's kind of the line you walk when you do procedural generation and you are relying on user-made content. Sometimes it just can be a little bit of an oddity, but hey, it's very good overall, and the voices really do sound very alien, which is brilliant. At the end of the day, the graphics of Spore did their job, and they serve suitably well and perform under pressure in a game that is filled with user-made content, and graphical glitches or faults were virtually non-existent, apart from the occasional blurry texture popping in. The sounds also did their job adequately, but nothing really blew me away, and I guess at best the presentation did enough to ensure a mental engagement in the world, but not enough for the truly deep immersion. As is the case with many god simulators, the story is mainly driven by the actions and the whims of the player. However, a good story still needs a good setting, a world to settle down, and either obey the rules established in that world, or twist them around to create a very, very strange story. So how good is the world building in Spore? Does it work, or like the gameplay, does it sit as one big missed opportunity, or thinner than a disappointing water biscuit? Well, no, not really. The world building does feel like one of the areas where more thought and effort was put into the game. You won't see a lot of this world building until the space stage, however, but that works fine with me, as that's the stage where you're most likely to be spending the longest amount of time in, and is the stage that was supposed to build up to a conclusion of sorts with some sort of mega endgame payoff. The story is mainly told in the medium of occasional hints dropped by other space empires as you chat with them through diplomacy, but mostly you will be discovering the lore of the universe through collecting artifacts which have been scattered around the galaxy. A lot of the treasures are tablets or stones or scrolls or whatever, which talk about the tenets of the many philosophies that some of the space empires follow, such as mercantilism, conquest, or zealotry. Some also discuss an older era of the galaxy and allude to what lies in the centre and why those who guard it are so hostile to everyone. It's pretty okay world building and also easy to follow, and does add some extra immersion to the galaxy. It doesn't make up for the grindy and tedious gameplay, but I did look forward to discovering a new ancient scroll or tablet to read, if only because it was a grindy task that actually seemed to contribute something to the grand scheme of things and to solving, the grand mysteries of why we are here. The descriptions of the items you find as well contain some of that classic Maxis sense of humour you'll recognise from the first two Sims games, and the news tickers from the SimCity games as well, which I've always found pretty endearing and have tickled my funny bone quite well. As I may have alluded to though when discussing the gameplay of the space stage, the end is where the steam fully runs out, as there is no ending. And yeah, in an open-ended game, I wouldn't really expect there to be an end. However, when it has been built up across the space stage that there's a boss faction and a mystical treasure lying in the center of a galaxy core, then a closure of some sort is to be expected. I thought that an endgame was actually going to be built up in the quest in which you are sent out to establish contact with the Grox Empire, but nope. That's actually the last quest you will be issued by your homeworld, and therefore the end of what we could consider to be the main quest line. It is also a shame that it finishes on such a loose end and didn't really have a story set up to kind of guide you to the finish line based on all the choices you've made previously, because they do add up with the various consequence abilities you've unlocked, and it would have been good to see all that just finally wrap up in one last little payoff as you achieved omnipotence, but it's with such little ceremony. It's just, yeah, there isn't really an end, so it's just a story of no conclusion, unless the conclusion is you got bored, saved the game and just stopped playing it, and then yeah, you've just left your empire in stasis forever. But that's a load of bloody fun, isn't it? I guess the last thing I just wanted to also pick up, just going back to the area of the medium in which the story is delivered, there is a really cool little timeline feature, which really is a great way for quickly reviewing what your consequence abilities are and what you are working towards. That's really cool, and I do love the way in which it has documented everything you have done. Literally every little mundane task it documents, which really is great for putting everything into context and is a great way to track your historical progress. It's done with, again, a really good sense of scale. But that aside, that is the bottom line. It's presented well, and there was definitely a good way of telling the story in a way that wasn't necessarily interfering with or disrupting the gameplay or the creative freedom. But even if it was optional to do a quest to the center of a galaxy, again, it's just like they've missed the target completely in my eyes. When sitting down to write this section, I've always felt this is a section where I've been quite harsh and quite overly harsh in that sense, and I often dock games a lot of points, which is what was quite a common pattern in the previous series of reviews I did. So instead of being overly clinical and judgmental and just doing a physical tick boxing exercise with these games, perhaps a better way to approach this section is how well this game has stood the test of time, and how likely I am to suddenly develop a deep burning craving to replay this game and actually have fun, as opposed to a whim to like replay the game and then not commit to more than an hour of gameplay before I get bored. That being said, how well does Spore sit in this classification? Is the game fun enough on its own? Are there plenty of ribs springing out from the spine of this game's skeleton to explore with alternate paths of discovery and experimentation? Well, Spore does kind of offer those alternate paths through the power of the creature creator tools, which means you can evolve a wide variety of creatures from something you made up on the fly to trying to build your magnum opus of a creature you painstakingly planned out in your head. And if anything, yeah, I will find myself revisiting Spore occasionally, if only to play around with the creativity tools. But will I come back and replay Spore from cell to space stage? Probably not. Unfortunately, while the dependence on user-made content does mean every playthrough is somewhat different, it really sits more on a cosmetic level than a gameplay level, because, like I said, the gameplay is very limited and very grindy, and the lack of depth makes the options for replaying very limited, apart from doing 3 straight runs of the 3 main consequence paths of the first 4 stages. And even though I liked reading the lore of the Spore Galaxy in the space stage, I just cannot bring myself to commit more hours to endlessly flying around from system to system and wrestle with the controls to pick up random scrawlings for a seemingly endless number of collectibles. In terms of standing the test of time, Spore does remain very unique in what it does, and no game immediately springs to mind, or more to the point, no game I have played or heard of at the time of reviewing this makes Spore feel obsolete. However, when looking at the tribal civilization space stages, you could draw out contenders such as Age of Empires, Sid Meier's Civilization series, and Stellaris, but nothing comes to mind that does the whole thing in one go from beginning to end. The graphics haven't aged terribly, and the game runs stably on Windows 10 despite occasional crashing, and is easily accessible if you want to try it out for yourself. All you need is a Steam or Origin account and some money. And there are also expansion packs out there, 2 of which in fact. There's the Creepy and Cute Parts pack, and there's also the Galactic Adventures pack. Now, I haven't played Galactic Adventures at this point in time, however I will do a sort of a mini review in the future if that's what people want to see, and I might do it out of my own free will as well. But the Creepy and Cute pack is, well, what it says, it's really a parts pack, but it only really affects, well, the creature stage, because that's where all the DLC lies. There isn't really anything for the other stages, which means, yeah, you've basically paid £10 to have more cosmetic things in the creature stage. And unfortunately, while the parts really do look cool and do open up a few more creative options, it's £10 and you actually don't really get any gameplay. There are new animations, there are new paint options, but nothing really that broadens the game. So if you are going to buy Spore, I'd recommend just buying the base game. You can pick up the parts pack if you want more options, and I would do it if it's on a very nice discount on Steam, but it's really not worth the money. So yeah, I'm not going to be recommending expansion packs, and like I said, as you may have just guessed with that, this expansion pack does nothing to really boost the replayability of this game. So to summarise, I will probably return to this game when I feel like messing around with the creativity tools, and hell, I might indulge in a little bit of the cell and creature stages, which were the most fun to play. But beyond that, I don't really feel like willingly replaying this game again, going for the full cell to space stage, because it means going through the frustrations of a tribal and civilization stage, and then the space stage, you just start to lose that sense of purpose after a while, unfortunately.
And that brings us to the end of this review. Thank you very much for watching, my friends. And yes, the game didn't score too brilliantly, but hey, in the whole new leaderboard of Series 2, it actually takes first and last place. So, you know, gets to be in first at least for a little bit. Maybe the next game will knock it off the post, maybe it'll score even lower. I don't know, because I haven't reviewed it yet. That being said, the next game I am reviewing is Euro Truck Simulator, because I made a little promise to myself that I would review every game that I left hanging as a Let's Play on my old abandoned Let's Play channel. So, Euro Truck Simulator is next. We'll be having a look into that, and that'll be it really for now. There will be a review of Total War 3 Kingdoms dropping at some point when that releases. It won't necessarily be a full release, it's just going to be sort of a first impressions, because with that game I think megatons of hours are going to be needed before we decide if that game's any good, or, well, you know, we just got to have a deep dive. Either way, thank you very much for watching once more. I hope you have a lovely evening, or a lovely day, or a lovely whatever time of day it is for you. Be it day, night, anything else. If you do want to play Spore, do feel free to check it out. It's not something I'd recommend or shout from the rooftops, but you know what, it is a game that is quite unique in what it does, and I do think at the end of the day, even if it is just a faff around with the creative tools, it is worth a try, or at least just wait until it's on sale, and then you can probably part with some money and just have a bit of a play around. But like I said, just as it gets further on, it did get a bit too grindy, but hey, we'll always have the ability to create really, really, really weird aliens and watch the game try and interpret it in the creature stage. Either way, thank you very much for watching once more. I think I've said that now way too many times, but I shall now bid you goodbye. And if you want to check out some other stuff on my channel, then there are going to be some links appearing imminently. And if you want to subscribe, then feel free to do so, and that'll probably tip you off when the next review's up, because they're probably not going to be coming out on a regular basis for a while, just because of many things that happened in my life. But I am going to try and get into a flow of getting at least one review out per month. Depends on the length of the game that I'm reviewing now. Some games are longer than others at the end of the day, and I have a craving for the longer game. Either way, have a lovely evening and take care.